Live pictures of violent protests erupting in Ferguson, Missouri tonight. It comes as we get new pictures of Officer Darren Wilson taken on the day of his deadly confrontation with Michael Brown. And we also get a look at some of the evidence considered by the grand jury. You can see, well, you can't see much here. The close-up photos show what he claims are his injuries. And if you look at the medical reports, they speak about facial bruising. And now we have Officer Wilson's account as told to the grand jury. We understand that he told authorities Michael Brown shut his own police door on him and started swinging and punching at him. Mark Fuhrman is a former LAPD homicide detective and a Fox News contributor. And first, I just want to get you to react, Mark, to the discussion I just had with Andell and Richard.
Well, I don't think there's anything, Megan, that you're going to say to anybody on the other side of this issue about Michael Brown being the aggressor. Michael Brown is the suspect, and the prosecutor didn't use those words, but he clearly described Michael Brown's conduct from the very beginning at the convenience store to the very end of his life as being the aggressor and the suspect. And that is why there's not an indictment. So when you hear an exchange, as we just did, completely irrational, delusional, and completely incapable of absorbing facts that are forensic in nature, that are eyewitness in nature, that are from the very person that was getting attacked in the car. So there is really no way you're going to get any kind of reasonable dialogue from somebody that's decided that Michael Brown was murdered.
As we watch the protesters on the streets and the fires that have been set and the looting that has taken place tonight, we speak with Mark Fuhrman about the evidence as released in the case, including this testimony from Officer Wilson to law enforcement investigating the case. I've got the transcript right here of his actual police statement. He talks about the moment Michael Brown left the car, started running away. He says, "I was yelling at him to stop and get on the ground. He kept running, and then eventually he stopped. When he stopped, he turned. He looked at me. He made like a grunting noise and had the most intense, aggressive face I've ever seen on a person. When he looked at me, he then did like the hop, you know, like people do to start running. And he started running at me. During his first stride, he took his right hand and put it under his shirt into his waistband, and I ordered him to stop and get on the ground again. He didn't. I fired multiple shots. After I fired multiple shots, I paused for a second, yelled at him to get on the ground again. He was still in the same state, still charging, hands still in his waistband, hadn't slowed down. I fired another set of shots, still running at me, hadn't slowed down, hands still in his waistband. And he says he got 8 to 10 feet away. He was still coming at me, and I fired more shots, and that was the end of it, Mark.
You know something, Megan, you and I have talked about this for months. We have gone over this scenario. It has gone down exactly like we thought it would go down. And why? Because you have little tidbits of information, and you can see how you go from one square to the next square, and you can kind of see what is going on with the suspect and the officer. But these statements from Officer Wilson are so important because he articulates every little thing an officer is thinking in those split seconds. He knows that both these suspects have not been searched. He knows that the conduct of this man when he attacked him in the car was so violent, and he also knew that he could not overcome this man out on the street if he closed that distance. And then when he reached inside of his shirt, he saw that he might have a weapon. Completely an in-policy shooting. And when I listen to all these commentators on some of the other networks, they're talking about, well, the grand jury isn't a body that actually is seeing this the way a regular jury would. You're right. A regular jury would be interrupted by the defendant's attorney, and they would be challenged, and the jury wouldn't get the evidence until the end. This jury had all the evidence and was not interrupted whatsoever. The other thing, Mr. McCullough went into such articulate detail. He didn't have to do this, but when he gave this case to the grand jury, he did something that most people don't understand. He could have simply reviewed this shooting, all the statements of Officer Wilson, the investigation, and then he could have simply said, I'm not filing any charges. In policy shooting, within the state law, it's done. But he gave it to the grand jury.
Right. And the people refuse, some of them, to abide by the system as it's been set up and under the hands of a prosecutor who they put in office 4 times, who's handled plenty of cases involving black defendants, white defendants, you name it. And yet tonight they riot on the streets of Ferguson because they say this system they do not trust. Mark, thank you for being here. Up next, a look at Officer Wilson's injuries and his statement. We'll play it for you.